What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today we bring exciting news that Mecha Frieza has been errated in the Dragonball Super card game. Errata basically means that it's going to read different to what it actually says. So even though it says one thing on the card, we read it as another, and quite frankly, the card is a lot less powerful than it used to be. Was it a huge problem? Pretty much. I mean, it wasn't the only deck available, but if we go to dbsdecks.com, that do a very good job of tracking the metagame, they've got Mecha Frieza as 52% of the current mecha, and the next highest is the Mass Saiyan, which only has 17% of the meta. That's a big difference. So rather than banning the card outright, we have an errata, so it's not as good as it used to be, and we're all going to have to get used to the new wording. And what's really nice is that Bandai, over on the official Dragon Ball Super page, have just given us a very long, full explanation to allow me to walk you through it, explain everything, and any comments you've got, chuck them in the comment section. That's what it's there for. Now, funnily enough, Bandai actually said we don't think that it is a degenerative meta or a degenerative environment. What they said was that even though there's decks that can beat it, there are 4 principal reasons why they've decided to errata the card. Number 1, it's got a generally useful ability that going forward may make future expansions less fun and interesting to explore. Reason number 2, it's always going to demand their consideration when designing future cards, potentially limiting design space. And number 4, competitive players will always have to keep the card in mind, limiting deck building freedom and affecting future enjoyment of the game. We'll get to reason 3 in a moment. All 3 of these basically come up with everyone involved in the game has to really plan for Mecha Frieza. A really healthy metagame has half a dozen good decks or more, and when you build a deck, you've got good matchups and bad matchups, and you have to try and mitigate them. But Mecha Frieza basically comes along and tells us, you know what? Yeah, whatever you're doing, you've got to make sure you've got an answer for this, and it's not particularly healthy to do that. But the other reason, as far as I'm concerned, is by far the more compelling one. There's no easy solution to help starting players and those still learning the ropes to deal with the archetype. New players forced to play against the archetype may stop enjoying the game, lose interest, and quit. And that is not what you want in a card game that is less than a year old. Playing against Mecha Frieza sometimes ends up with board positions on turn 1 of the game, whereby your opponent just looks at it and goes, brilliant. Or they've lost by turn 2, turn 3. When you're starting off and you've made a deck out of the few cards you've been able to cobble together and gone along to your very first tournament for a little bit of fun, this is not what we want to come up against, and to be frank, it's no fun whatsoever. You want a new game to keep growing. We all want the new game to keep growing, so this errata has got to make sense. Now, the old skill read, at least on the front of the card, when you activate an extra card, you may choose one card in your life and add it to your hand. If you do, reduce the energy cost of that extra card by 1 for the duration of the turn. If this reduces the energy cost of that card to less than 1, you may activate the card without paying the specified cost, i.e., the cost of any extra card is reduced by 1, as long as you add a card from your life to your hand. Now, in the Dragon Ball Super card game, every player starts with 8 life. When you go down to 0 life, you lose. So why do you want to give up life other than just getting cards? Well, the other reason is we've got these awakens. And the thing of Awaken is that when you get down to a certain amount of life, usually 4, but there are exceptions, Android springs to mind, you get to flip the card over, draw 2 cards, and then you've got a potentially slightly different skill, as well as a greater attack power. So not only was this skill allowing you to play extra cards more cheaply and build up your board in the early game, but it was also allowing you to reduce your life to the point where you could awaken far faster than you would usually be able to do so. And it would lead to some ridiculous series of plays. So to give one example that Bandai gave in their press release, you would be able to use Planet Vegeta on turn 1 or 2. And playing Planet Vegeta allows you to search for a Saiyan card with an energy cost of 4 or less from your deck and add it to your hand. And of course it's got a cost of 1, but as long as you take a card from your life, you don't actually have to pay that, because Mecha Frieza makes it free. And then you can grab cards like Saiyan Teamwork Kaba, which allow you to reduce the cost of your Khalifa and Kale by 1, while also having an auto which allows you to look at the top 10 cards from your deck and choose a Khalifa or Kale and add it to your hand. Maybe hit an Awakening Kale, which would be one of the cards with which you would finish off the game. And then let's not forget things like Shugesh, for instance. Sorry about the terrible pronunciation, my apologies. Which, of course, is one of these super combo cards, which essentially gives you a 10,000 combo for free, which is nice, and allows you to play a Saiyan from your hand without actually having to pay the energy cost. Big downside of this, you can only play it if your card leader is yellow. That's fine, Frieza is, and your life is at 4 or less, which it usually wouldn't be, except for the fact that you've been using your skill constantly to reduce your life so that you can awaken early and then gain access to Super Combo, and then you just sit there hitting with stuff like Hidden Awakening Kale until you win the game, because you've got a ridiculous board position compared to your opponent. And you might be thinking, well, hang on a second, where do they get all this energy from? Well, amongst other things, don't forget they can use Sensu Bean for free, which gives you more power and puts your energy back to active mode. So that's what it used to be and why it was a bit of a problem. What does it say now? Well, on the front, it basically says, during your opponent's turn, you may choose one card in your life and add it to your hand. If you do, reduce the cost of that extra card by 1, blah, blah, blah. If you use this skill to add a card in your life to your hand, negate the skill for the duration of the turn. 2 big changes. Number 1, you can only use it on your opponent's turn, so you could use it defensively to use something like a Wiz's Coercion, but you wouldn't be able to use it on your turn offensively to use something like a Planet Vegeta or a Sensu Bean. And also it's once per turn, and the issue with this is very much, even if it was only used defensively, you could still potentially play 3 or 4 defensive cards during your opponent's turn to get your awakening really early and then use your super combo and all of that malarkey. If we flick to the back of the card, it's still only able to be defensive, it's only during your opponent's turn, but you can use it as much as you like. But at this point, you've got 4 life or less, so you really do need to be careful using it too often. The biggest issue with using it multiple times per turn was getting your Awaken or Super Combo earlier than you should, and that has been taken away by stopping you using it multiple times before you awaken. You don't need to stop it multiple times after you awaken. Now, they did consider banning the card, but decided that wasn't particularly needed. And as they do point out in their press release, there are plenty of ways to combo this. It's just that you really did have to go out of your way to combo, and it really was making for a kind of annoying environment. One good example they gave was Marseille and the Mysterious Warrior from the expansion set 2, which could be played with Overrealm, which means it could be played far more quickly, and you got to, when you played it, using Overrealm, choose any number of your opponent's battle cards without blocker, for which the total cost adds up to 5 or less, and send them to their warp. And it had double strike as well, which of course was very good, given that your opponent would drop their health down using Mecha Frieza's skill, meaning that their life was generally lower, and if you could pull off a double strike without them beating you in a combo, that would mean that you would be able to take them down fairly quickly. And as Bandai pointed out, there were weaknesses of the deck. Firstly, it's got low energy costs. Secondly, it quickly drains itself to 4 or less. And thirdly, it generally fills up with unusable extra cards in the late game and isn't able to pull off the combos if you can survive the first couple of turns. But it has been errated now, so we don't need to worry about it. Or to be more specific, we don't need to worry about it after May the 1st. It's not banned, or at least errated until then. Which leads us to 2 questions with which to end this video. Question number 1, why announce it before San Jose, but not actually ban it, or errata it, I keep saying ban, I really shouldn't, until after San Jose. San Jose is a regional which is happening on the 14th and 15th of April. That is just under 2 weeks from now. And the reason here is very simple. The quicker they announce it, the more time we've all got to get used to it. And if they errated it so close to a big regional like this, it would force players to run out and build a new deck, potentially spending lots of money, wasting their time, etc., because people prepare for tournaments this big. So it makes sense to go here and say, look, we've decided this, here's the information now, but we're not going to go too quickly. We're still going to let you have this one last big tournament with Mecha Frieza, because you've all been preparing. But the other question we need to look at is this actually being banned in Europe right now? Because it doesn't actually say, the implication being that it probably is. But here's the thing. Mecha Frieza was big with Set 2, Union Force, but it didn't get really stupid until Set 3, Cross Worlds came out. And if you look at the examples given by Bandai in their press release, you've got Planet Vegeta from Cross Worlds, Unwavering Solidarity Shigesh from Cross Worlds, Unstoppable Ambition Super Saiyan Khalifa from Cross Worlds, Terrascythe Goku Black from Cross Worlds. The majority of these cards that really made it dumb were from Cross Worlds. Does that mean we're going to have until Cross Worlds to play it over here in Europe? I don't know, and I don't think so at the moment. I think it is going to be banned around the world. Having said that, Cross Worlds is legal in America, but it's not legal over here, and there isn't actually any confirmation as to whether this is a worldwide ban, although there is a heavy implication. As with all of this, we will have to wait and see. But Mecha Frieza has been errated, and hopefully now you know why and how it's been errated, and you can start preparing for the future. But this is one of those topics on which a lot of people have a lot of things to say, so do make sure you drop a comment down below telling me what you think about this errata. Do you think we needed it, and do you think it's come just in time? Or is it too early? Or is it too late? Let me know. And make sure you like this video and subscribe to this channel and follow me on Twitter at the Wossy. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross and you've been watching Wossy Plays.